Are you ready to become the captain of your soul? Then let me welcome you to Invictus Radio. I'm your host, Josh Blaze. Let's get into it. Hot damn. I like that new introduction. Welcome back to the Invictus podcast. I know it has been a minute, but we are going to be doing this show on a regular basis going forward. I'm your host, Josh Blaze, as many of you know, and in today's episode, we are going to be talking strictly about focus. I released a post on my blog and on Medium just yesterday about how to focus. I truly believe that having focus is the sole differentiator between those that succeed and those that fail in reaching their ultimate potential. It has gotten to the point in our social media, instant dopamine and gratification society that if you are able to focus for 5 minutes, you are in the minority. It's quite sad to say, because I remember as a child being able to sit for hours and hours and hours reading books, having conversations, learning about the world around me, and it feels, sadly, as if I've lost that ability to have focus. If you're anything like me, I'm sure that you feel that too. I'm sure that 10 years ago, before you started scrolling infinitely for multiple hours per day, you had the ability to focus on one single task, get it to completion, and then move on to another task. Whereas today, I feel like so many of us are unable to even focus for more than about 30 seconds. So, what this episode is about is how to get your focus back in a world that doesn't want you to be focused. Hilariously, in my post yesterday, I started it off with, I'm willing to bet that you're not even going to be able to make it to the end of this post without pulling out your phone or opening up another tab or anything along those lines. And it's quite sad because I nearly guarantee that every single person that reads my blog post is not going to make it to the end without some sort of interruption. That is the world we live in. Constant notifications, constant pings, people that desire your attention, because we live in an attention economy. It's a world that is driven on eyeballs. So how do you gain that focus back? How are you able to give your attention to the things that you actually want to give your attention to, and to forego the things that are distractions and the things that don't actually bring you closer to your highest purpose? If you feel like this is an insurmountable task to gain your focus back, I have news for you, and it's hopeful. Neuroplasticity is a beautiful thing. Your brain can relearn how to focus on tasks, how to give your all. And I guarantee that if you decide that that's something that you want again in your life, you will be able to achieve it. So, put your phone in another room, put it on airplane mode, and let's get into it. That is, of course, if you're not listening to this podcast on your phone. If you are, keep listening. So, number one, first things first, in getting back to a focus state, is I want you to get your phone off of your desk and away from where you're working. Truthfully, nothing impedes focus more than this little device that each and every single one of us carry around on us 24/7. You don't need me to tell you that you have a cellular phone addiction, because every single one of us does. These things are manufactured, engineered in ways to keep our attention and to keep us coming back for more. That means that if you have notifications set on your phone, specifically audio notifications, you need to turn those off right now. You need to make sure that you are unable to see notifications of incoming messages on all social media platforms, of likes, of whatever. That is totally meaningless. The only notifications that you should allow on your device is incoming phone calls and a select list of people that you want to be able to contact you. Your wife, your husband, your best friends, your parents, your family, what have you. But beyond that, you should be using your device in a way that is more akin to email than it is to having a rope around your wrist tied to that device. Because I know so many people that walk around with that phone in their hand. They are unable to disconnect. You have to be able to disconnect so that we can start focusing on the things that we actually want to focus on. The next thing you're going to do is you are going to set a timer for 90 minutes. I know some of you subscribe to the 25-minute Pomodoro technique or the 50-minute Pomodoro technique. I used to believe in the 50-10 split. I actually made a post about it months ago about how I would work for 50 minutes and then I would take a break for 10 and then I would go back to work for 50 and continue. That's much better than 25 minutes. I'll tell you that, because 25 minutes, I don't believe you are actually getting into any sort of flow state whatsoever. I think it takes between 10 and 15 minutes for a human being to gain a deep focus on what they want to do. And then you are only getting 10 to 15 minutes of work in a focused state. And then your timer goes off and then you have to take a break and then you have to come back and do it all over again and gain that focus. It's a treadmill. It's silly. That's why I believed in the 50-10, because, well, if I give myself 15 minutes to get ready, well, then I got 35 or 40 minutes to focus and do work. But you know what? There is scientific research that 90 minutes is the key. I was listening to an Andrew Huberman podcast recently about focus, and that's actually where the idea of this whole thing came from. 90 minutes is the place you want to be when you're focusing on a task. I can't imagine myself writing code or doing any sort of writing task without getting into a state of only being on that task of deep, deep focus and deep work. 90 minutes. Set a timer. You're not going to be able to do 90 minutes your first time. I promise you that. However, it's going to groom you into the time slots that you should be focusing for. So point number 1, no phone. Put it in another room while you're doing a focus session. Number 2, set a timer for 90 consecutive minutes. Number 3, go ahead and grab a coffee or a tea, something with caffeine. Caffeine does boost your focus. So, I'm all in on performance enhancers. You should be too. Go get that cup of coffee or tea. Recently, I made a video about how to make matcha green tea because I have been having deep panic attacks from coffee and caffeine. However, I love my coffee, and I've actually switched back to drinking coffee in the morning and then tea in the afternoon. How I do it now is I take some L-theanine with my coffee. You can either get powder and put it directly into your coffee or just get some tablets. And generally you want a ratio of 2-to-1 theanine to caffeine. So if a cup of coffee is, for argument's sake, 100 milligrams, you're going to take 200 milligrams of theanine. If you have anxiety caused by caffeine, I think I may have just solved your issue. At least I've solved my issue when it comes to drinking coffee and feeling like the end of the goddamn world is upon me. All right. So in addition to that phone being in another room or just completely off, what I want you to do is find a way for yourself to not get distracted by the internet if you're working on a computer. If you aren't working on a computer and you're able to do writing or something by hand, I highly, highly recommend that. If you have a computer that you can physically shut off the internet, that's something you can look at. You can add Chrome extensions to your browser so that you are not going on Facebook or Instagram or some other sites that will distract you from your focused, purposeful work session. For me, how I do this is I have contextually different browsers. What I mean by that is I use like 4 different browsers on my computer. And I understand that I'm a nerd and I understand that not everybody is like that. But what I do is simply have my social media apps on a browser called Chromium. That browser is not open when I'm doing work. Then I use a Firefox browser for doing code and for research. And I use a Qt browser window for doing documentation, research, etc. So when I'm working, contextually, I don't have the browser that I use for social media up, and I don't log into social media or anything that would be distracting on any of those other browsers. If I try to go to Facebook on Firefox, for example, I will be prompted for my password, which I don't even have on my computer, and I won't be able to do it. You can also download some sort of Chrome extension that disallows you from going to Reddit and Facebook and any of those platforms that end up being endless rabbit holes. The choice is up to you, of course. My next little tip of focusing is get some music that you can work to. Some people swear by those 40 hertz binaural beats. I personally, I don't know, I like them, but I also don't, so sometimes I use them. I like deep house music, something with a continuous beat, hopefully without lyrics, but something that is kind of rhythmic and gets you into a trance, for lack of a better word. Other music that works for something like this is actually video game music. Video game music is engineered to make you focus on what you're doing, obviously playing a video game. And if you're someone like me, it's a bit of a nostalgic kick. So go listen to that RuneScape music or that Halo music or whatever it is. It's going to make you focus better. Trust me on that. My favorites are number 1, Age of Empires 2 music, and number 2, RuneScape music. Throw me up on a cross. I don't care. Next tip is learn how to touch type. I actually went all in on touch typing a few years ago because I was so mad at myself that I could only type like 55 words a minute. I felt slow. I felt like I wasn't actually able to get my thoughts out onto the screen, and I felt like I wasn't tapping into the fullest potential that I possibly could. Now, after years of practice, I'm above 100 words per minute pretty much all the time. You can be too. It takes a lot of practice, but it's something that I highly, highly recommend. It helps you focus more because you're able to translate your thoughts through your fingers and out into the world beyond. You want that input on your computer to be completely unfettered as much as possible. I don't know if I'd go so far as to say I'm going to go get the brain implant, but I think that being able to type as quickly as possible is a massive, massive leg up on your competition. Go play some Type Racer, go to monkeytype.com, any of those sites that allow you to practice your typing really quickly. I recommend. Finally, here's the last tip. You can go to a novel place. Have you ever noticed when you go to a coffee shop and you open up your laptop, you seem to be more focused? There is a phenomena that novel places cause you to focus more deeply. Maybe it's because you're alert as to your environment because there's different stimuli. I don't know what the science is behind it. I just know that it is a studied phenomena. I'll add some links in the show notes after this podcast. There's actually been authors that would hop on a transcontinental flight, write a big portion of the book that they're trying to work on, hop on a flight back, and be done the book by the time that they arrived back home. I'm not saying that you should go drop, $20K on business class seats to Dubai and back, but it's a thing to consider nonetheless. So, to conclude, my tips for focusing and learning how to refocus in a world that doesn't want you to be concentrated. Number one is to shut that phone off, put it in another room, put it in a drawer, get it out of your sight when you are wanting to do a deep work session. Number two is to set a 90-minute timer. Number three is to get some caffeine in you with a little bit of that theanine if you are an anxious buck like myself. Number four is to negate your ability to be distracted on the internet by installing either plugins or contextually limiting yourself from social media and distracting websites. And number five is to put some deep music on, nostalgic music, stuff that makes you focus. Doesn't matter what it is for you, just figure it out. It's probably different for you than it is for me. Who can judge you? Number six, learn how to touch type and increase your input speed. And then lastly, go to a novel place and see how much better you focus out in the wild. If you have any other tips for focusing, I'd be more than happy to hear them. Please do post in the comments below. And let's help everybody get back that focus that we know that we have as human beings. It's in our DNA. We're meant to be creative beings and having deep focus to create the things that are in our minds and souls. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Invictus Radio. We are going to be doing it much more frequently on a schedule. We are pushing this out there as much as possible, so stay tuned. If you want to subscribe, feel free to do it on any of the various platforms that we have this podcast on: Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, etc. You will find us on all of them. And until next time, stay unconquerable.